Welcome everybody to another edition of the Cover 2 podcast. I am Nick Nenad and I will be by myself today for this version of the Cover 2 podcast. Unfortunately, Jared and I couldn't do our usual or our annual NFL preview and prediction show that we usually broadcast for like 2.5 hours. We're too busy getting ready for our respective big time events that we're going to be attending this week. That involve NFL teams. And what I mean by that is that Jared Smith will be at Rams and Bills in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Smith will be attending the first NFL game of the season. I will then be traveling Sunday to the great state of Arizona to go watch my Arizona Cardinals take on the Kansas City Chiefs live and in person. Plenty of videos, plenty of content. Live content. I may go after Jackson Mahomes. I may go after Juju Smith-Schuster, and I may even go after Kyler Murray, okay? On this show, okay, I'm going to go over every single division in the NFL. But I'm going to do it in like 5 or less minutes, okay? I'm not going to bore you with your time. So, you know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, guys. It's football. It's football, okay? Football's back. I'm excited. All right, we're moving to the North, and specifically the NFC North next. When you look at this division, it's not as crazy as the NFC West, and it's not nearly as crazy as the AFC West. But it's still a solid division. There's some interesting storylines here, so let's talk about it, okay? Let's start with the dumpsters of the NFL, and that is the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions, okay? I apologize to fans of those teams, but guys, it has not been a good last decade, and I don't think things are looking up much this year. Specifically with the Bears, I think it's going to be really bad, okay? They hire a defensive coach, okay, Matt Eberfleece, okay, to coach a team that has no offensive weapons. And a defense that just traded away their best player in Khalil Mack. Their linebacker, Roquan Smith, doesn't want to play for them anymore. And it just generally regressed. So I think the Chicago Bears are going to have a tough time winning 4 games this year. They're really bad, okay? Besides David Montgomery and I guess you could say Justin Fields, they have no offensive weapons. Really, really tough year for Justin Fields, but let's move on. Bears are going to be last place in the NFC North. Let's move to Detroit, the team that was on Hard Knocks. So a lot of us got to see them kind of closely. I didn't because I don't give a fuck about the Detroit Lions, okay? You know, this team had a couple surprising wins last year. They competed. They didn't get killed a lot. Jared Goff kind of really showed that he's not as bad of a quarterback as a lot of people thought he was. But just generally with this overall roster, specifically on defense, I don't think this team has much of a chance to get close to the playoffs. I do think they've improved, and they do have some things to look forward to. If they decide to stick around with Jared Goff after his contract's up, it would mean that he really performed, and that guys like Penei Sewell, who's their star left tackle, and DeAndre Swift, and maybe some receivers like Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of stepped up, and then the defense they built through the draft. But I just generally think this team is not that good this year. They rally around Dan Campbell, it seems like, and they have a good culture, but I think this team's max about 6 wins. So let's move on to the 2 potential playoff teams in this division, okay? That's the Packers and the Vikings. When you think of quarterbacks in the NFL, and this is, again, how I'm basing a lot of this preview, there's no other quarterback you think of when you think about the NFC North than Aaron Rodgers, okay? And so, obviously, I got to put the Packers above the Vikings in terms of quarterbacks. But it's very interesting how these teams' off seasons went and how oppositely their offenses changed, okay? The Packers, they lost Devontae Adams. They essentially have no wide receivers coming into the year. They're really, really that talented. And their offense just got much worse, okay? Then you look at the Minnesota Vikings. They still have Kirk Cousins, who's a solid quarterback. Underperforms a bit in big games, but a pretty solid quarterback. You still have Justin Jefferson. You still have Adam Thielen. You still have Dalvin Cook. You have an emerging left tackle in Christian Darrisaw. Oh yeah, and they finally got rid of Mike Zimmer, and they hired an offensive coach. Okay? Guys, the Minnesota Vikings, I think, are going to win the NFC North and make the playoffs this year. I think they steal that first game, week 1 against the Packers, if you can even call it stealing. I think it's the Vikings' year to make the playoffs. I think it's their year to pass up the Packers. And guys, I wouldn't be surprised if there's only one playoff team from this division that makes it. And I think it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings.